Writing a compelling main video game character is a difficult enough task on its own. CrossCode, though, was not satisfied with just writing a standard main character and decided to set themselves a greater challenge with Leah. As those who have played CrossCode know, Leah has a malfunctioning speech module that prevents her from saying much beyond a few short programmed phrases. So how can she display the right amount and diversity of emotion? As any actor can tell you, communication is not just about what you are saying, but how you are saying it. Facial expression, body language, and tone are crucial for general communication, and the developers used all of those to not just give Leah a strong personality, but also get the player to understand and empathize with her along her journey. I'm here to discuss not only how they accomplished making a compelling video game protagonist with limited speech abilities, but also why Leah in particular is a great character and her journey through the game. Leah is a spheromancer in the MMORPG Crossworlds and is specifically an evotar of Shizuka, basically an artificial intelligence clone. Personality-wise, Leah is a sensitive, competitive, enthusiastic, and occasionally snarky character. In spite of her language difficulties, she is very expressive with her facial expressions, gestures, and few words. She does have a shy side, especially because of her speaking difficulties, but once people get to know her, that goes away quickly. The game embraces the idea of show don't tell for a lot of Leah's characteristics and development, and it works magnificently throughout the game. She develops over the course of the game in part because of the trials she goes through and the friends and foes she encounters along the way, but I'll get more into that as I discuss her character journey. The game also responds well to how you play as Leah, starting early in the tutorial where if you complete tasks quickly set by Sergei or Jet, Leah will act smug in the next dialogues. Same with if you win or lose the dungeon races with Emily and Citron or duels with Apollo. It's an excellent way to build connection and character for Leah that aligns with your experiences as the player. Now usually I would start by discussing the very first scene that Leah is in, but before that I want to talk about the first scene of the game and what that sets up with regards to Leah. The actual content of the scene is generally used to evoke a mystery and hint at what's to come, but the specific dialogue does not relate to Leah. What does relate to Leah is the choice to have Shizuka appear before her in the game. The intention of the developers is clearly to draw attention to the similarities between Shizuka and Leah both in design and gameplay. This immediate comparison sets up the later revelation of their actual connection, but does not reveal exactly what that connection is. For me, I remember wondering whether Leah was Shizuka herself, just transported into a new body without her memories or something. It's a highly effective scene for building tension and pays off brilliantly later on. This allows the player to form their own ideas as to who this person is and how they connect to our lead character, setting up an ongoing mystery purely for the player. Then it's time to meet Leah and another important character on the journey, Sergei. This whole scene is about small steps, as Sergei puts it. Small steps towards understanding Leah, towards establishing her personality, and of course the small steps of introducing the gameplay to Leah and the player. At first, Leah has very basic expressions and motions, but as she learns and grows more comfortable, she also becomes more expressive. We see Leah get proud, exasperated, and smug among other emotions, which, considering this is a tutorial for Leah and the player, might, in fact, mimic the player's emotions during this tutorial, further establishing that connection between player and main character. This only builds with each new scene, such as the hilarity of Leah's reaction to her horns, the interactions with the crew members, and then Leah's first words and her simultaneous delight at them, and also disappointment at her limitations. There's a lot going on in the first scene, from establishing Leah, getting to know Sergei, the reveal that Leah lost her memories, the speech issues, and then finally the major conflict with the Blue Avatar's appearance and his seeming knowledge of who Leah is, driving the mystery even more. Having barely escaped the Blue Avatar, Leah begins at the end of the tutorial for Crossworlds, where she meets a couple very important characters for her journey. The first one, and most important, is Emily. Emily immediately engages Leah in a race in the final tutorial dungeon, which fits to establish Emily's personality and give Leah a chance to show her own competitiveness and determination without communication. Although her communication is improving with the addition of her name to the pile. Communication, though, is no problem for forceful personalities like Emily and the second important character she meets in the opening area, Apollo, and his insistence on beginning scenes with Leah on higher ground. Apollo starts out as more than just an annoyance for Leah and the player because of the higher stakes if Leah gets reported and found out, at least at first, but then Reasonable Jorn shows up and quashes that whole fear. But the whole episode brings Leah and Emily closer together while also demonstrating the tenuousness of Leah's situation. Plus, it won't be the last we see of Apollo. Leah is still very shy and unsure of what exactly to do, which is why it is so important Emily continues to bring her along so they can both be taught how the game works. As Leah moves on to actually playing the game, she begins to show more personality, especially when interacting with the NPCs. This is side content, but her bevy of expressions and reactions to the NPC shenanigans are highly amusing. The next important character to meet then is Emily's friend Lucas, a higher level player who teaches Emily and Leah more about the game. This section is mainly about getting you, the player, used to the game and teaching you about the Track of the Ancients, which is the main quest of Crossworlds. It doesn't give a lot of chances for Leah to do much beyond nod and learn alongside us. Oh, and set up a duel with Apollo, which is great fun, so long as you win. While Apollo and Leah are very different, a couple things they do grow to have in common starting in these scenes are competitiveness and pride in their class as spheromancers. Not the most significant of traits, but any personality traits are progress for Leah, and it's nice to have pride in something. Also, as Emily is logging out, Leah gets her next word, bye, which we can again see Leah's delight in having. We also get the first flashback, although this series of memories doesn't have any information about Leah. The next series of events mostly covers Leah growing more accustomed to the game, including joining the First Scholars Guild. Although joining wasn't without its issues given Leah's communication issues, part of Leah gaining trust in her fellow guild members is the kindness and respect they showed her when they discovered her impediment. Her friendly rivalry with Emily grows with their dungeon races, her memories gradually come back, and her vocabulary continues expanding along with her snarky interactions with Sergei. Then we have Leah's introduction to Citron, aka Tronny. It's a brief interaction before Leah meets back up with Emily. Later though, Citron will bring a very different energy to the party, and that will be very helpful after a certain upcoming incident. Unlike most characters I've covered, specific lines of dialogue don't generally stand out until later when Leah has a little more flexibility, but one sign of Leah's development is in her reactions to others. At one point, Emily is relaying a story about her being yelled at and called a child for sleeping in and missing a meeting due to playing Crossworlds. At the end, Leah is clearly sad, and I think there are a couple reasons for this. One is her empathy for Emily, who has been her bedrock throughout the game so far, and two, Leah probably feels weird having someone, even someone she doesn't know, denigrate Crossworlds because this is her entire life. By saying that Crossworlds is all fun and games, this stranger is devaluing Leah's existence. This moment stood out to me as an example of Leah's growing friendship with Emily and her insecurity around who she is and the world she is stuck in. A fact that's exacerbated when Emily makes the casual remark, sometimes makes you wish you could just stay in this world. Obviously, Emily has no idea of the impact of her words, impact versus intent, people, and while Emily can see Leah is bothered by something and says Leah can talk to her about anything, the communication barrier between them is too great for that to be truly possible. Let's hope this is the only time that causes issues in their relationship. There is a sweet moment off of this of them affirming friendship, but at the moment that friendship will always be a little distant because of Leah's circumstances, as seen with the moment of Leah questioning how she can tell Emily about herself. Leah doesn't know all that much more about herself than Emily knows at this point. Her frustration boils over when talking to Sergei, and she has her first moment of true anger, yelling "why" at him. He then proceeds to tell her that her real body is in a coma. We find out later this is a lie, but I suspect the reason behind Sergei telling her this was to give her hope, something to work towards in the game. This choice may come back to bite Sergei, but in the moment, in spite of Leah's shock and sadness, she musters up the determination to keep trying. Most of these important talks with Emily and Sergei play out in Leah's mind after she logs out, but the final part is her meeting a person, someone whose aggression scares Leah as she backs away off screen. Thankfully, Leah is able to distract herself from distressing memories by meeting up with Citron and later Emily to tackle the main questline and another encounter with Apollo. This time before agreeing to the duel though, Leah demands Apollo use her actual name. It is clear Leah takes great comfort in her name and being treated like a human, so every time Apollo ignores her like she's an NPC and refuses to use her name, she gets more and more annoyed. Apollo, being the occasional self-righteous annoyance that he is, insists that she needs to duel him and earn his respect for him to call her by her name, which honestly is messed up, but Leah agrees to his terms. She's also lucky to have Emily there to call Apollo the names Leah can't. After the duel, Apollo does begin calling Leah by her name, although he also insists on including Spheromancer to her name each time as well. The dungeon race, as usual, doesn't serve too much to establish Leah's character, but at the end, when Emily is still freaking out over the final boss of the area, Leah rushes over to give her a hug. This is the start of Leah being very hug-friendly, and it makes sense that Leah would show affection via physical touch because she can communicate a lot without needing to say anything. It's a sweet detail to her character development that does come back a lot as the story progresses. We also get some more deadpan snarky Leah once Citron finishes the race, which is always fun. This is also the moment where Emily realizes Leah can't speak, which is both hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time. Another important small moment is Leah being the first to suggest logging off, showing that she's taking more agency in the situation than before. Leah and Sergei continue to make progress in figuring out the memories, but more clues come in not just about where Leah is in her memories, but also why she's forgotten most of her life. It was purposeful. Following the dream is the announcement that the guild will be going on a raid for the first time. The raid goes smoothly for a little while, but then error messages start to appear, and just before Leah and the others reach the end of the raid, Leah is stolen out by the blue avatar from before. This is the start of a trauma conga line for Leah. After battling for a little while, the blue avatar transports Leah to an unknown facility outside of the playground, one that was in some of Leah's memories. She meets Gautam, the man behind the blue avatar, who recognizes Leah and worries about her getting her memories back. She also runs into Lucas unexpectedly in the same location. Together they decide to try and figure out what this place is, why they can't log out, and how they can get out and back into the main game. It is becoming clear to Leah though that Sergei is hiding something, and what that is will of course come out in the worst possible fashion. The memories following this conversation reveal a little more of what Gautam, Sergei, and Satoshi are trying to do, and leads to Sergei telling Leah that Satoshi is her brother. Back in the Vermilion Wastelands, Leah and Lucas continue to bond as they proceed through a bare-bones quest line. They serve as comfort and familiarity to each other, and that bond is vital for Leah being able to get through all that happens in this area. Leah is going to really need it after this next encounter. As Leah prepares to leave to see Lucas, alarms sound and sounds of fighting occur outside. Then Shizuka enters. Shizuka confronts Leah, demanding to know why she is here, and then she reveals the truth. Leah is an Evotar, a digital copy of an original player, that player being Shizuka. Leah is an AI and will never be able to leave the game. The shock on Leah's face and the way she backs away shows how blindsided and terrified she is, along with mimicking her memory from earlier. But Shizuka does not relent, proceeding to physically assault Leah when she finally asks why. The worst blows from Shizuka, though, are the verbal ones. You have no right to exist. Whoever brought you back should just delete you immediately. Leah begins to break down in heartbreaking fashion as the memories come flooding back, and all she can say is why. Sergei does finally get through to her with his words, but that only brings back the memories of his lies to her. Her terror and grief turns to anger. Anger directed at the man who made her believe she was human. The one person she thought she could trust completely. After that confrontation and revelation, though, Leah goes numb. This is communicated brilliantly by the developers just by Leah's expression. Leah is such an expressive character that her complete blank stare is unnerving and shows exactly how she feels. She feels nothing. She can still respond a little, but nothing changes her expression. At least until Lucas talks about getting out of the game and hope, and that triggers the tears. Getting someone to talk about being upset is hard enough under normal circumstances, but it is healthy and important to do so. Lucas continues to make an effort to find out why Leah is upset. While it doesn't solve everything, it helps, and it is another moment showing how much Leah cares about the people in the game, Emily and Citron especially. Also, more hugs are good, and I think this solidifies Leah's love for hugs. It's not big for character development, but it's good that Leah gets a more lighthearted moment as she goes through the recreation of Lucas's room and the various expressions she goes through. It's a pleasant distraction for her from everything else going on. What does come of this, though, is a discussion on the meaning of life and the nature of life itself. As Lucas says, so we're either stuck in the game or stuck in real life. What's the real difference? It's a new perspective that Leah clearly didn't think about and seems to allow her to come to terms a little more with her situation. After that conversation, Leah attempts to get in contact with Sergei since they still need to speak, but he's not there, so she goes to sleep. She wakes up to a quick and somewhat scary conversation with an unfamiliar man inquiring about who put her back in the game. When he leaves, Sergei returns to say he can't talk much but to go ahead with the plan so he can try and get Leah and Lucas out of the wastelands. Sergei's plan is mostly good, although there are some mess-ups and unexpected discoveries along the way. But in the end, it seems Leah and Lucas are going to escape. Lucas, though, gets stuck and captured. Gautam tries to use Lucas as bait to lure Leah back in, but Lucas yells at her to run. So she does. Leah escapes, along with the grief of leaving the one person who comforted her and witnessed the whole mess behind to an uncertain fate. After the escape, Sergei finally comes clean on Leah, her past, his lies, and the development of Evotars. His main reason for lying is that in the past, the Evotars have struggled when told the truth, and Leah was his only lead to his friends. It goes to show how much Leah has grown that she can take in all this information, process it, and continue onwards. She extends forgiveness to Sergei and boldly takes the next step forward with him as equals in order to secure a place for Evotars. But there are still plenty of bumps in the road up ahead. Leah finally gets back into the game and is greeted by a thoroughly pissed off Emily. Unfortunately for Leah, communicating her exact situation, or even an approximation, to anyone in the game is basically impossible. In her frustration, likely on many fronts, Emily lashes out at Leah. It doesn't help that the circumstances led to seemingly odd behavior, including a hug for a Lucas that does not appear to remember anything from the wastelands. Confused and distraught, Leah leaves to continue her journey alone. Sergei is able to reveal that the Wasteland Lucas is likely an Evotar, but the impact of her interactions with Emily and Lucas, along with the understandable mental toll of everything else that has happened over the past week in game, means Leah is at a very low point. It's so evident even Apollo notices as he challenges Leah to another duel, not that anything will deter him. After the duel, Jorn and Apollo, mainly Jorn, recognize how upset Leah is and offer to let her join them in exploring the area. While Leah would obviously wish to be with her friends, the banter of Jorn and Apollo and their understanding of her speech module issues makes this a welcome distraction from everything else going wrong with Leah at the moment. After a long play session and a rest, Citron reaches out to Leah in part to broker a reconciliation between Leah and Emily, although he didn't tell them he was planning that. What Citron being there can offer, though, is another way for Leah to communicate off of his assumptions instead of just nodding or shaking her head at Emily's bombardment of questions. The plan works. Citron is able to tease out that Leah didn't choose or want to leave the raid, and most importantly, that she missed her friends terribly and still wants to play with them. Her vulnerability finally gets through to Emily and they make up. When people talk about the power of friendship, this is always what I imagine. The desire to be with someone and help make them happy that is so strong it can overcome any obstacle. That is the bond that Leah and Emily have formed, and this proper reunion is so touching. It's also a big relief for Leah and the player alike because now we have some time before the next emotional gut punch. After completing another set of dungeons with Emily, Citron, and later on Apollo, Leah has finally gotten the opportunity to explore Sapphire Ridge, the location she's glimpsed several times in her dreams. After completing the main story in Sapphire Ridge, it's time for Leah and Sergei to put their plan in action. After some memory recovery from Leah, they are able to access the secret area of Sapphire Ridge, setting up a confrontation with Shizuka again, but this time Leah is ready to fight back. Leah and Shizuka duel for a while before Shizuka gets a call and then lets Leah in to see Satoshi. Satoshi reveals many of the mysteries of the game, their disappearance, the Evotar project, Leah's birth, Sidwell's involvement and abuse of the project, and finally Satoshi's death and rebirth as an Evotar. It also turns out it was Satoshi's plan all along for Sergei to discover Leah because Leah holds the key to taking down Sidwell as the only other person with access to the Evotar server. The last big character moment for Leah comes after this when she sits down and chats with Shizuka. I'll get into the importance of this moment more in the character foil section, but this is the moment where Shizuka recognizes Leah as distinct from her. First, they bond over the dislike of the horns on the character design and how they both like their scar, but this just goes to show their similarities. Bonding over similarities is good, but in this case, Shizuka needed an idea of how Leah was different from her and thus not just a copy. Leah shows this by attempting to be physically comforting to Shizuka. As she says, "Getting all touchy like that is nothing like me." It is an acceptance tentatively given, but a very important step for both Shizuka and Leah moving forward. It's now time, though, to put Sergei and Satoshi's plan into action. Leah is tasked with getting a meeting with a bunch of the players she is connected with in the game to help storm the Vermilion Wastelands, minus Citron, of course, who has to leave before then. This plan comes with several personal risks for Leah. The discovery of who she really is could distance her from her friends, and then the possibility of getting shut down and never rejoining the game even if they succeed. Despite this, Leah is willing to make that sacrifice, continuing to show her desire to do what's right over what is easy. With the help of her friends and Leah's determination, they manage to crash the Evotar server and enter the tower to take on Gautam's last challenge. After overcoming all those challenges as well as beating Gautam's avatar, Leah makes it to the top, and it is there the human Gautam offers Leah congratulations and the path to the server before walking off the side. The plan succeeds, but with it comes a lot of questions, but mainly, will the Evotars, including Leah, be allowed to come back? That's a question for the DLC A New Home though, but this ends Leah's journey with tearful goodbyes and the hope for the future. She started out lost in the world, not knowing who she was or what she should do. Along the way, Leah didn't find out who she was, she made who she was through her interactions with friends, rivals, and enemies. She distinguished herself from her origins as Shizuka, formed strong bonds with people, and found a mission worth fighting for in the protection and liberty of the other Evotars. I will not be covering A New Home in this video. I do not think it offers enough insight further into Leah's journey to justify including it. That being said, it's an excellent piece of DLC that wraps up the story both in Crossworlds and for CrossCode very well, and I highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't already. It goes off of the true ending, so make sure you get that first before going on for that reason, but also because the bad ending is not fun. Before getting into the specific character foils, I think it's important to talk about what Leah represents as a character and how that is woven in with the story. CrossCode tackles several topics with Leah's character, including the ethics of artificial intelligence, which is covered explicitly in the text of the game, and disability, which is both explicit and subtextual. Leah is effectively mute, a comparison that is directly referenced by Sidwell, giving her the name of his real-life mute companion. Leah's disability is treated as such in-universe with accommodations and stuff such as the guild raid and the quiz. The game also shows some of the negative signs of the disability and how people treat disabled people with the conflicts between Leah and Emily and also Leah and Sergei. It is unfortunately not uncommon for violence, both physical and verbal, to be directed at disabled people for their inability to perform certain tasks. We see that with Emily and her anger at Leah not being able to explain what happened to her. In addition, there can be a tendency for infantilizing disabled people, assuming they don't feel like abled people and need to always be taken care of. Leah has this in some capacity with her relationship with Sergei. Early on, Sergei is always telling Leah exactly what she needs to do, from where to go to when she needs to log off. It's understandable in some ways, and Sergei does tend to ask Leah yes or no questions to understand what she thinks, but it still means Sergei and Leah had a very unbalanced relationship at the beginning. The turning point comes in the Maroon Valley, where Leah starts pushing back and communicating her displeasure with Sergei. The one subtle thing that changes to demonstrate this new dynamic though, anytime Leah logs off, she is the one who says bye first. It's a small detail, but it shows how she's taking a little more power and control over her situation, something that is expanded upon in A New Home. I still recommend any CrossCode fan play it. Leah has two main character foils over the course of the game, although she also has strong character revealing dynamics with Sergei and Apollo, but I hope I touched on those enough in the main section of the video. Leah's character foils are Emily and Shizuka. Starting with Emily, similar to what I discussed with Estelle and Chloe from the Estelle Bright video, Emily is the red Oni to Leah's blue Oni, and not just in color. Emily is more impulsive and hot-headed than Leah. She is also far less observant than Leah is. Now, part of Leah's greater reservedness is because of her unique situation, and she is very affectionate and expressive once she knows and trusts people. However, Emily is immediately friendly and herself, whereas Leah needs to grow into it with every person she meets. This combination makes them a great duo and is very helpful for Leah in that Emily can be the main talker and she can settle into a comfortable area as a quiet, friendly, and occasionally snarky companion. On the similarities side of things though, we see throughout the game that both Leah and Emily are very determined, competitive, and have strong senses of right and wrong, which helps explain why they bonded so quickly and so strongly. On the other end of the spectrum from Emily though, we get Shizuka. Shizuka is not expressive. She holds things inside until they explode out in anger and frustration. While Leah is limited in expression verbally, she fully gets across her emotions through gestures and facial expressions, and Leah does not bottle things inside if she can't help it. Except for the first time Shizuka confronted her, but I think that would cause anyone to shut down, and she eventually broke down and expressed herself with Ivotar Lucas's help. With Emily, Leah's the more subdued one of the pair, whereas with Leah and Shizuka, Leah is far more expressive, shown mainly in how physically affectionate she is, much to Shizuka's chagrin. Even beyond that though, when Leah and Shizuka are having their discussion by the lake, Leah's facial expressions vary greatly while Shizuka's stay the same. I think Leah's interactions with Shizuka help demonstrate how far she's come since the beginning of the game and help establish her as a middle ground between Emily's impulsivity and Shizuka's reticence. They both bring out different sides of Leah and help her progress her character along. The lessons I take from Leah and her journey are the ideas of non-judgment. We never know what's going on for other people, the importance of communication in whatever form it comes, and the right path is rarely easy, but those who accompany you in doing what's right even when it's hard are the people you want around you. Leah has so many of the traits I adore in characters, from her funny moments to her heartbreaking ones, and I think her journey is not just special because of her speech issues, but because of who she is as a character. I enjoyed my time with CrossCode mainly because of her and her story, and I am thoroughly impressed by the writers for this game. Thank you for joining me on the ride of this video. It was an adventure in itself, as I'd been working on this script for several months prior to you seeing this. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, likes are one of the best ways to give that feedback, and I would love to hear from you in the comments what you enjoyed about Leah's journey or CrossCode in general. Subscribe to keep up with any new videos I post, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Have a great day, and happy gaming.